Good morning. I'm talking to Sue Woodard, and good morning, Sue.
Good morning, Don. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Sue is an originator with Hometown Mortgage, but she's actually a lot more than that, and we'll get into this. Normally, I don't date my interviews, and the reason I don't is that I've always felt that if you do a good interview, it's timeless, and it wouldn't make any difference if you listen to it 10 years from now. And but in this particular case, I think the times are a little bit unusual, and today's October the 1st, 2002, and it's just kind of crazy times with the bond being 10-year bond being so low, and these are times that are highly unusual. So I do kind of want to date it because I think during the interview, there are a couple of things we'll talk about that are kind of germane to the times that we're in right now. But kind of before we even get into it, are you, let's just kind of start off where you came from. Are you a hometown Minneapolis girl? Or?
Yeah, well, I have been born and raised in Minneapolis, and I started back in the mortgage business about 10 years ago, back in '93. And I actually started as a processor. I was working at a credit union at the time doing different kinds of banking and car loans and personal loans and all those fun things. Mm-hmm. And had kind of odd clientele because I worked on campus at the time. And just kind of the day came that I decided I needed something different, and there was an opening in our real estate department for a processor. And that's where I started in the business, actually, is at a company where everything was very much cradle to grave. We originated, processed, underwrote, closed, even serviced the portfolio. So had some good experience there.
That must have been a little bit of a death wish. But you get too much volume doing that, it can be crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And it definitely wasn't a real high volume, type position, but definitely there was a lot of breadth of experience that I got there. So it was a good experience.
Was it the mortgage arm of a real estate company?
It was a credit union, and it was the real estate division in the credit union. And I was there for a couple of years, and then moved on to another company that was also cradle to grave. So again, kind of had a wide range of experience, but primarily until '99 was just processing and underwriting, doing some managing.
When you processed, eventually, I assume you kind of got over to the mortgage side of the business. Mm-hmm. But I guess my first question to you is, it sounds, well, I'll just make a comment. It sounds to me like that's a pretty darn good preparation for what you're doing now.
Yeah, I've said a number of times that I just absolutely applaud and salute all of the loan officers. Probably 99.9% of loan officers out there just dive right into being a loan officer, with no prior experience in the business. And we all know how training works by and large in the mortgage business.
Yes, we do, don't we?
Get the three-part training. Here's your rate sheets, here's your cards, there's the door.
And good luck, right?
So it was a great experience to have that technical background, and it really gave me the confidence that I needed to get started as an originator.
Yeah, I kind of think that it's something that I don't talk about too much, but I've always thought that people who have the ability to or have the opportunity to be a processor in some fashion, or an underwriter, or in some sort of lower level, and by that I don't mean that with a bad connotation. I mean more in the technical processing and the doing of things. I really think they come out having just superior skills when combined with really good sales skills.
Yeah. And I think that, the thing that certainly I've recommended to a lot of new loan officers is that even though we have AU, we've got all of the, DU and LP and all these great tools, if you don't know how to analyze what you're putting in and know how to, look at the tax returns and analyze the income and know what's going to be a problem or not, you still could get in trouble later anyways, so don't let that be a crutch. And, I've really advised a lot of people that, no matter how long you've been in the business, think about taking a processing class, think about taking an underwriting class and learn that stuff. Mm-hmm. So.
Well, you obviously learned something, because one of the things that I didn't say at the beginning that I often do is that you have really risen to the top very quickly. You were one of only, I believe, about 8 people that was invited by Todd Duncan to his Mastery Series this year, where he had about close to 2,000 people attending.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a real accomplishment. I know you're on target to knock out $50 million this year, and that's an accomplishment. But what really kind of struck me were a couple of things. Besides the number of people that recommended you, I mean, it was really kind of amazing. Barry Habib, and I could start there and go down with 3 or 4 other heavyweight people that all had you at the top of the list in terms of interviewing.
Wow.
But what kind of struck me was the fact that, in fact, it kind of overwhelmed me, was the rise to the top in such a quick fashion. I mean, you really have jumped from 93, when you started out in the business, to 95, and where you're working, areas like an underwriter, an office manager, into production. But before we get into the production and sales side, I really kind of want to go back, and I would like for you to maybe spend a little bit of time talking to the loan officers out there about the technical preparation that's really needed and how important that is. I've said many times in the interviews, there's only 2 pieces to this deal, and one is know your product, the other is know how to close. So why don't we spend a little bit of time just kind of talking about your preparation, a little more detail with respect to what you would recommend to new loan officers and perhaps loan officers that have been around a while that just can't get going.
Right. Okay. Well, I would say, again, like I stated a minute ago, I just feel like it's so crucial to invest in yourself and get the training that you need that may not be offered by your company in order to learn those technical skills that you're going to need to really do your job well. Again, I kind of feel like AU has gotten to be a little bit of almost a crutch that we use sometimes, because I think we feel like we've got it all figured out up front, but it's like they say, garbage in, garbage out. We can think we've got it all figured out in the beginning, but if we didn't put in the right information, it's not going to turn out right in the long run. So I'd really advise, again, that a loan officer out there, even if you've been in the business for a couple of years, things are changing so quickly and the guidelines change. I would take a processing class. I would take an underwriting class. There's also so many amazingly good tools that are out there, to learn the technical side of our business. We subscribe, just me personally, I subscribe to the MRIs, which are the guidelines that come out quarterly, and I certainly can't say that I, read them every time they come out, but, it's something that we refer to on a daily basis, when we're watching that. And part of, I guess, because of my background and where I came from, one of the strengths that has given me is that I do have the technical knowledge such that my team trusts that when I start out a transaction, it's not that I don't ever miss things, but they know by and large that, because of the background and experience I've had there, and that really anybody can get by, taking some time and getting some education there, that it's going to be started out right, and I'm not just throwing up a deal against the wall and hoping my processor knows how to figure it out for me. One of the biggest ways I would say that we've grown our relationships over time is that our business partners and clients know that they're not going to have surprises. They are not going to have surprises at the closing table. And I think the only way that really happens is if you've done your job right up front. Just like you just mentioned, if you're doing it right from the start, then you just kind of need to babysit that thing through to closing. The other thing that I think it's really important for people to be cognizant of that I think they forget is that oftentimes, especially as a new loan officer, your operations staff and your processor in particular probably has more experience than you do. And I've been on the other side of that, where I've been processing for brand new loan officers that, to tell you a real quick story, I remember something that happened a couple of years, this was years ago when I was processing, but I was processing for 3 brand new loan officers, all right, didn't know what they were doing. And, for all of us originators, when we tell our processors that we're out on sales calls, they don't believe us. They all think that we're out golfing and going to lunch and doing those things that it appears that we're doing all day. But I think they actually were golfing this day. But anyways, these 3 loan officers were gone. And a realtor had called into the office and, said, "Hey, is Patrick there?" I said, "No, Patrick's not available, but I bet I can help you." "Well, I've got a really important question. I wonder, is Ted there?" "No, Ted's not here either, but boy, I bet I can help you." And, "Oh, no, it's a really important question for a client. How about Mike? Is Mike there?" I said, "No, Mike, Mike's not here either." And I said, "But I bet I can help you." And he said, "Well, isn't anyone there?" And, I remember thinking, and, I can't say what I was thinking because, I think
like talking right through you.
No profanity allowed on the call, but, I remembered thinking if they had been there, what would have happened is they would have put they would have put him on hold, would have turned to me, asked me the question, and then turned around and answered answered the realtor. And I just feel like it's really important that you number one, empower those people that are working behind you, because in many cases they're going to be more hands-on with the technical side of the business, what's changing, what's happening. Empower those people to answer questions and work with your business partners and clients, and also appreciate what their skills are. Again, in many cases, they've got more experience than we as loan officers do, so we need to respect and appreciate that.
But I would also say, as a minor challenge to your statement, that while all that is true, the fact of the matter is, when you're a loan officer, you are the one on the front lines. You're the one that's got to walk into that realtor's office, and you are the one that is going to get asked the questions. And all of us have, I've been around a long time, and 59 now, but I've been around a long time, and I well remember a manager from an office in Northern Virginia who would save his hardest questions for me. He thought it was kind of clever. For me, it just scared the heck out of me, because I got a lot of business out of there, and I found out years later that he really liked me, and I guess in retrospect I liked him too. But he would call with these questions that were very, very difficult. They weren't necessarily off the wall, but they were difficult. And you really learned that you kind of had to be on your toes, and you had to know your stuff. And that never changes. And I agree with your comment a little bit earlier in terms of training of loan officers, that a lot of the loan officers in this business, and this is a subject I beat to death, so we won't spend a lot of time on it, but a lot of loan officers out there just do not have the proper training. And I'm not just talking about sales training. I'm talking about the stuff you're talking about, the technical side of it, and the processing. And always admired one interview I did with Charlotte Ellis out in Utah, who specialized with attorneys and CPAs, and the ability that she developed over a period of time to deal with the self-employed and with unusual situations, to a point where her whole foundation of her business really grew because of the reputation that spread far and wide on her ability to handle that sort of stuff.
Right. Well, and it really does set you apart, because, again, there are so many people that, I think as a loan officer, you don't want to go take a processing class. You don't want to go take a class on how to analyze tax returns. But I think it is going to become increasingly important. As you said, the market is going to turn at some point in probably the next 6 to 8 months, and it's probably going to turn hard. And those are the kinds of things that are going to set you apart as an originator. And again, I know that, having that technical expertise certainly has helped me, and again, other people you've talked to as well. It is one of those things that really sets you apart. Yeah,
and these really are unusual times. Have you ever had the pleasure of going through a bust? I got the feeling you may have missed the one in, was it 89 and 90?
Yeah, I was just fresh out of high school.
Well, let me tell you something. When as a lot of our listeners out there, and maybe a lot who haven't been through one, but when the turn comes, you are correct. They usually come pretty quick.
Yeah.
And the difference between this week and 2 weeks from now can be night and day.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, a couple of things, start to come into play. First off, did you lock your loans in, or were you playing the game?
Right.
Anyone that is playing the game now, with the 10-year being as low as it's been in, since 78 or whatever, but anyone that's playing that game now is true insanity. In fact, the market was up over 300 points today.
Yeah.
I have no idea what Barry said, but I'll bet you sent out a couple alerts.
It's not a bad idea to lock.
Right, exactly.
We pay attention when Barry talks.
Yeah, absolutely. It is amazing as time has gone on, and I like him a lot. He's been on. I've interviewed him. What I find really compelling about his mortgage market guide is that, and I do follow it. Even though I'm not in the business, I don't go out in the street. I do like the bond market. I've always followed it, and it just amazes me how more often than not that he is on.
Oh.
It is, it's a product of, not just his mind, and he really is quite brilliant, but it's just the fact that he has good people that work for him. He gets good research, bundles it together, and he gets it out quickly.
Well, and one of the best parts that we found about it, John, is that he, being an originator, he understands the way that it needs to get to an originator. It's kind of the nice bite-sized information. There's all of the depth of information there that if you wanted to, study it for hours, you sure could. But he understands, because he is a, top world-class originator, that you need to have what information right at your fingertips, how fast. And I can't even tell you all the different ways that we've used that. I never used to work with financial planners before the last year when I started my subscription to Mortgage Market Guide, and I have about 20 now financial planners that I'm working with, and I credit it all to various Mortgage Market Guide because of the information that I have at my fingertips that I'm able to relate to them and their clients. It's changed my business. It really has.
So you can talk about those Japanese candlesticks and.
I'm not going to get too crazy about trying to say that I understand every little doji star and hanging bear curves and all of that.
Right.
But I try. But the great thing is, again, he's able to send you something that I can pull a little. I always talk about I pull a little soundbite out of what he sends us every day, so that I'm able to talk to my clients. And and I'm not going to say that I'm not uneducated on it, but I'm able to say, hey, this is what the bond market is doing right now, and based on the analysis that we're reading, this is what it could mean. And that's the kind of thing, again, that's going to set you apart. And as an originator, your clients need to feel like you're their trusted advisor, and that you're in touch and you know what's going on and you know how to advise them. And again, I can't say enough about Mortgage Market Guide. It's made a huge difference in my business in the last year.
You know what is also interesting, and this is not supposed to be a homage to Barry, but the thing that really gets me is the fact that the price is so cheap too. I forget, $500, $600, whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing you make up in the third of a deal.
Nothing.
For a year.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things that I see loan officers making a mistake with in general is that people are not willing to invest the money in themselves and in their business to get the tools that they need to grow their business and to solidify their business and take the next step. And that's one of those things, is that I'm a strong believer in that you need to take a step and invest in something probably a little bit before you feel like you can maybe afford to. Like hiring an assistant or subscribing to something like Mortgage Market Guide or some of the other great tools that are out there. They're not free, but if you have to have the confidence in yourself to know that, I'm going to make this up, in how many deals? What is it going to take me? On Barry's deal, my goodness, if you just make a 0.25% better on one deal, you probably paid for your whole year's subscription.
Right. That one's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And but the other ones out there too, I think, make a lot of sense. Like taking a processing class. You're one of the first people that actually. And every time I do an interview, something new kind of pops up. It's kind of ironic. You would think after you did a lot of interviews, you kind of heard everything, but you really haven't. And I think that's a real good point out there, because there are people, loan officers, I think, gravitate naturally, as do branch managers, towards pushing the loan officers. If they're going to get some training, it's going to be like sales training and mentoring with other loan officers. But taking a good underwriting or processing class, it's invaluable.
Yeah. Well, and a big part of that too, John, that I found is that I think it also. I guess I'm a big believer in, having good relationships with your internal network of people. And I think it says a lot when maybe you call your head underwriter and say, I'm really interested in taking a class in underwriting so that we can do a better job and have files come through to you cleaner and better with less problems to make, your life easier and our life easier. Do you have a suggestion on where I could find a really good underwriting class? That's going to blow their socks off, because there's always that, and because, you've been around, that there's always that kind of clash between production and operations, where operations always feel like, we're out just golfing and playing and just, doing the cocktail napkin application and hoping it all works out. And, while that's absolutely not true, that's how sometimes they can view it. And I think it says a lot to your processor, to your, underwriters that you're working with, to say, I want to do this right. And at a bare minimum, you're not going to learn everything, by going to a one-day class, but I think you're probably going to find a lot more cooperation and help, from those people, where you're not going to get the attitude of, well, hey, you were out golfing and I was trying to figure out how to, figure out income, so it's not my fault it didn't work out. I think you're going to find a lot more, cooperation and good rapport with those people, and tell you what, your processor can make or break you.
They can, and I think there's something else today that's kind of entered into the equation too. Even though processors are making pretty good money compared to maybe 3-4 years ago right now, especially with the demand factor, the fact is that processors have always had a bit of, and underwriters too, have had a bit of a disconnect with loan officers. It's very subliminal. No one really says a lot about it, but they see these loan officers making so much money compared to them.
Right.
And they subconsciously are saying to themselves, well, I can do that. I'm doing all the work here, and geez, that guy's making $250,000, and I'm making 46 and really dying here.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is, where that is fallacious and falls apart is the fact that when you get up every day, you really didn't make a penny, and you don't know if you're going to make a penny.
Right.
It's all done through your hard efforts and your work.
Right.
And, it's the old risk versus reward.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of falls apart. But there is that feeling, and I do think that it's imperative for loan officers, especially in these times when the deals are so easy to come by, to make sure that they take care of the processors and underwriters.
Absolutely. That was something, in fact, that we had talked about when we were out at the Duncan Group Mastery event. That one of the things that I had said is that exactly what you just said is that we're in these days, especially right now, when you can't turn around without falling into a couple of more deals, and you throw them into the system. If they're your past clients, you're throwing them into the system in 10-15 minutes, and it's going to have to go through the processing and all of the same work. And we have gone really out of our way to take care of our back room. We recently hired several massagers, I don't know what the right word is, but, we hired some masseuses to come in for the day for, our processing, underwriting, and closing areas, so everybody could go get a little half-hour massage.
I think that's a new one. I like that.
Oh, it's great.
That's kind of a play on the one where they're doing this in the airports now, where they have these little side things. You go in there, give them $30, and, they fix you in 15 minutes.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't a big expense, and it was so worth it by, and some of the people, aren't even people that necessarily work directly with my team, but we just, we really wanted to try to do something special because I know they're working so hard and so long, and they're not getting the financial rewards that we are. And it is hard to explain to them. It's like, well, next year though, we might not be making any money, and you guys will still be okay with your salary, but it is so important to do those little things. Just mean so much. And again, I can say this because I've been on the other side of it. Just a little note, a little card, a little appreciation, a lunch, those dumb little things that you just feel like no big deal. It does mean a big deal.
And I think, and I do think this is an area where a little bit does mean a lot.
Yeah.
Just going up, I once did an interview sometime about over a year ago with someone, and he really made it a point. In fact, I tell you who it is. I actually saw him do it. It was Gene Lugat, who's just a wonderful human being. He's a regional manager with AccuBank up in Columbia, Maryland, and runs about 30 offices. And it's amazing just every time I'm out there, you see him walking around, shaking hands with people, talking to them, asking how they're doing and everything. He definitely does not hide in that office. And it's a huge office because it's kind of a regional processing center, too.
Yeah. Well, and it's, this business is stressful, and it would be so easy if you want to get really wrapped up in being negative, but the power of a positive attitude is amazing to me, because you can spread whatever kind of attitude that you want to, and I've kind of found in life and in business, your attitude is about the only thing that you're really in control of. There's a lot of things outside of our control, except for how we react to it, And I just, I've seen that a lot this year. We've certainly had, in the market that we're in, you understand what it's like, John, you've been there. It's easy to get stressed out, and it's easy to get negative, and that sure plays down to your team, and that's a big responsibility, I think, as being, a loan officer. Yeah, we are out there on the front lines, and it is stressful, but that positive attitude is, it can make all the difference in a day, in a month.
Yeah. I wonder if you would discuss a little bit, because you had such a dramatic jumps. I'm familiar, we don't need to go over them here, but I am familiar with your volumes from your previous years, and it's really notable, the huge jump. Now, some of it, of course, we're in pretty good times right now, but you're a little bit different in the fact that you've had huge jumps without being in the business for a long period of time as an originator. So you, unlike some other people that have been around for 10 or 15 years and built up these massive databases and everything, yours is very notable. And I'm just curious, what did you do to make that happen? And I'd like for you to kind of direct that, so to speak, your answer towards people who, are just, doing maybe 7, 8, 10 million and really need to try and get that next level.
Right. I would say probably, some of the main things that we've done is, and you touched a little bit upon, having a database. And one of the things that I realized a little ways back is that now we had a database, but it was basically a warehouse of information. We didn't have any kind of systematic plan in place to do anything with it. And what I was finding is I really stopped and thought about it, and I found a lot of I would say 3 big gaps in our business where we were missing business that could really be solved with our database. One of them was that I found that after I would pre-approve someone, I would file that pre-approval away neatly in a drawer somewhere and hope that they would call me back again, but I didn't have anything in place that I was staying in any kind of routine contact with them. Okay, well, that was a big hole in my business where, patching that up and using our database to be in regular contact with these people where I didn't have to just wake up one day and say, oh gosh, I wonder if, Joe Peterson maybe went out and bought a house. I should call him. Something is going out to him real regularly, keeping my face in front of them every week or two while they're out there house shopping. The second piece was that we had found that while a loan was in process with us, there's so many things that your client wants to know and wants to hear from you. And like you said, when you are at a level, of doing, 7, 8, 10 million, that's a decent amount where you've got a lot of different things that you're trying to stay on top of and work on. And it's probably not your top priority that you're going to be calling your client once a week just to check in on them and see how they're doing. Especially when you get to a volume level that's more than that, you just can't, because you're working on originating your next deals, and you can't do that. But again, I found that was a need that people had that we used our database to solve, where, we have a system where things go out throughout the process to inform them of different things that they need to know. Telling them, here's what your closing is going to be like, here's what you need to bring, here's what is happening, on your transaction, here's a status for you, here's how you make your first payment, all those little things that just give that extra level of service that, again, out of that has helped us probably more than anything with them referring people while they're in process, which we never used to get referrals from people while they were in process, and now we do.
Without getting into it, I just want to kind of interject to ask you a question, but I want to precede it with the fact that, which I discuss quite often, is that we don't want to get into things like methods and practices of your particular company, but I wonder if you would discuss what you felt comfortable when talking about databases. For example, do you use your own or do you use ACT and to customize it? What do you do?
Yeah, actually what we decided to do when we made this big change a ways back was we chose ACT. ACT and Goldmine are kind of the big 2 that are used out there. And I did choose ACT, and what I actually decided to do was I had a very specific idea in mind of how I needed it to work. I needed to have my client segmented into before a transaction, during a transaction, and after. And I had real specific things that I needed to happen during those times. I had real specific ways that I wanted it to be tied up to, my business partner database. And so what I actually decided to do is I hired a consulting company to come in and actually create exactly what I wanted, because I knew exactly what I wanted, and I was willing to make the investment and the commitment in saying, I know exactly what I want, now build exactly what I want. Now, in retrospect, I will say, Greg Frost, for example, has an unbelievable ACT database template it's phenomenal. And probably in retrospect, I probably could have tweaked the things that I needed enough to probably use his, and his is much less expensive than what I ended up paying a consulting company. However, I absolutely do not for a second regret having spent the money that we spent. I mean, it was several $1,000s, but it works exactly like I want it to.
Hey, but that's once again, that's a couple deals, and
exactly.
And I agree with you. Another person who David Jaffe's, David's one of the top if not the top producer for Chase, and he is in league with Jacqueline Zimmerman, who's one of the considered one of the top 100 experts in ACT in the world, I believe.
Wow.
And they put together something that's really quite good, too. And I've done some interviews with her that's in Sales Talk. And I agree with you. For those loan officers that are out there that do want to do it a little bit cheaper and get a good jump start, something like Greg Frost or David Jaffe's.
David's is wonderful. I saw him in Denver a few months ago, and yes, his is another one that very cost-effective, and it has probably everything you'd need and more.
Right, exactly.
So,
I actually have a copy, but I was given it a couple of months ago. I'm looking at it right now. I haven't opened it up yet. So I feel a little guilty as you're saying this. But I'm familiar with ACT, so I know how it works.
Well, and I think the biggest thing, just on the database issue, is that it is amazing to me how many people say, oh, yeah, I have a database. But, again, it's kind of the warehouse of information. And that's exactly what we used to do. We just would kind of send out a sporadic letter, from time to time. But we designed a really systematic plan for what do we want to be going out before somebody purchases and why. What do they need to be hearing? What do we need to be sending out during the transaction? And, at what points does that need to go? What needs to go out after? The consistency, I guess, is the biggest key with it. And we did not used to be consistent, and we've seen an unbelievable jump since we made a plan and stuck to it. And I will say, we took a major step backwards in our production to put that thing in place. And I think that's one of those things that people sometimes are unwilling to do, is take that, step back. I mean, it probably cost, it took at least 100 hours for both my assistant and myself to put this thing together and do all the work to make this work right.
Mm-hmm.
That cost me business. It cost me money. But I knew that I needed to take that step backwards to build it for the long run, and it's, so far so good.
Yeah, you know who else has kind of it's tangential, but certainly in the same ballpark, and that's Judy and Steve and Margaret at the Turning Point.
Yeah. That's who we use for our after.
Right.
Actually.
Well, why don't you talk about that, because they are very, very interesting people. I've got to know him. I met him at a mortgage originator conference, and actually they had a couple hours to talk with him, and he's worked with IBM. He's worked with the giants in the industry, and his wife is in the mortgage business, and she kind of said, hey, get over here and let's put this thing together. But he had the ability to create merge and purge databases, and he's a very, very very articulate, nice guy, and they are doing very well. And maybe you might discuss a little bit about that, because I think that's a product loan officers also can use out there.
Yeah, and just, we're just getting started with them. I just was introduced to Stephen and Judy at a mortgage originator conference some months ago, and we're just getting started doing that. And the thing that I love about it is that it's so personalized. You have your photo on there, you have your signature on there, and the things that they offer are so classy. There's so much junk out there, in our business, stuff that just doesn't look professional. And it's just such an easy, clean way that they, again, as being a former originator, Judy understands, how originators think, how it needs to work. They've got a way that you can also put in the name of your business partner, whether it's your realtor or builder or financial planner, wherever that referral came from. You can also kind of give a third-party endorsement back to your realtor. And so, again, that it turns into a selling point to your realtor. Hey, look what we, send to your clients. More stuff with your name and phone number on it, all throughout the year. And, so like I said, we're just getting started with that, but I have been thrilled by the information that we've started with them. And Stephen, too, he's a real master at relationship building, and that's something that our business has grown entirely out of relationships. I do zero advertising. My entire business is by referral. We actually, right now, in the heat of this refinance boom, are not doing any refinances that have not been referred to us or that are for past clients. It's completely by referral, and they are so in tune with that concept, and their products go so in line with everything that we've developed as far as how we're setting up our relationships with both our business partners and our past clientele. So I can't say enough about it. Again, it's called the Turning Point. And
they're out in Arizona.
Yep.
And let's see if I even have I do, because I'm very anal retentive. I have files all over the place. I'm just looking for the loan officers out there. Their website is www.ttp-inc.com, and they have a toll-free number, which is 888-887-7880. and Judy or Stephen, and any one of them be happy to talk to you. But I think to kind of get back on point here, the fact that what we're really covering, we may be talking about individuals, whether it's David Jaffe or Greg Frost or whatever. What we're really talking about is the thing you brought up earlier, and that is, if you're a loan officer, you have to spend money to make money. Yeah. And we've given, or you've given them, 3 different examples right here of good companies that you can feel confident working with, that you're going to make money with. But you got to invest that money up front. If you start running around saying, "Well, where am I going to get $2,000?" and oh my God, well, you'll never get to $2,000 because you're just going to kind of flail along.
Well, and Judy Margaret, actually of Turning Point, I remember, said something interesting to me once, that she said the reaction sometimes she'll get from a loan officer is, "Well, gosh, I only made $100 on this deal, so I don't want to spend money to try to, send this person cards over the years and try to stay in touch with them." And her response was, which I thought was so good, is, how can you afford not to, use that $100? What else are you going to do with it? Go out to eat? You might as well take that money that you've, that $100 that you earned, and turn it into a relationship for life with that person. Get those referrals that, they know people that are going to be buying, refinancing, doing different things. Make the most of the money, that you have. And boy, and especially right now, John, we're making good money right now. I mean, it's hard not to right now.
That's fiend money. Let's call it.
Invest it in yourself. I mean, take, again, like we talked about with Mortgage Market Guide, with upgrading your database, with doing some of the aftercare. Why recreate the wheel? Why just stumble around and try to, figure it out on your own? I mean, the masters of our business have perfected so many of these things, and we're able to get in for a couple $100. I mean, it's insane not to.
Yeah, it's funny. I listened to Tom Bass not too long ago, and Tom is of the same type. He's a top speaker at a Mortgage Originator. For those of you that don't know Tom, a very articulate and one hell of a guy to boot on top of it. But he's a great believer in using databases, to which he's perfected his own, I believe, and to do business.
Yep. Well, and I think, again, one of the biggest things, because what I found for years is I kept saying to myself, well, I do have a database. I do have one. It's just not doing anything for me. But, we are the masters of our databases, and I think it's so easy when we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day just doing of our business, if you don't have a systematic plan in place that's going to, if you say, this letter has to go out at this time, this letter has to go out at this time on every single transaction, this is how it's going to work, and you lay that system out in place, then it's probably going to get done. If you try to rely on, oh yeah, when rates go down, I'll send some kind of flyer out, to people, you're not going to do that. You get to a point where, you're busy enough doing other things, but that's the last thing in your mind that you really need to do. And it's a mistake. It's, like I said, the exponential growth when we actually put a plan in place for the database rather than just owning a database has been a huge, huge change for us.
Right, and it all comes down into how you use your time too. I used to tell a story, which one I'll do an abbreviated version, and basically how loan officers would try and remember everybody in a particular office, and they grab a card and exchange cards and whatever. And the problem comes is that, you do 30 or 40 of these and everything's fine. You remember their name and you get to the 41st and it's like having a mental enema. And now you can't remember anything because you just never had any kind of a system in place.
Right. Well, and I've got to say, especially since I've had a child, for whatever reason, I cannot remember names and faces and, making those little phone calls like I used to. I mean, I have to have a system in place or I won't remember to do it. I mean, it's not that I don't want to. It's not that I don't care. But I don't know what it is. I don't remember those things like I used to. And so it is such a reassuring feeling for me to be able to come back to the office, have 3 new cards of 3 new agents I've just met, plug them into the database, and know that they're going to be getting something from me, whether I remember or not.
Right. Well, and that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you know who else is very good? We're counting 1 million people today. Sure, but I tell you who else is very good is Kurt Warner at Arch Telecom.
Oh, yeah.
And which I think is now called Arch, but they're great in using the voice and fax broadcasting and once again doing stuff where you have a database that gets integrated into these companies so that you can reach large amounts of people in a very short period of time. And
right.
But that costs a little money too. Right. It's not obscene, but it does cost a little bit of money.
Right. Well, and I think, again, on that same line, you have to, I always think about before I invest money in something, and I never think about it as that I'm spending money on something, I'm investing in something for my business. And I always think about it in terms of, well, how many loans do I need to do to pay for this?
Right. I think that's great, sure.
Yeah, we do a lot of, we have a great client appreciation party that we do at the end of the year, which is a really fun event. And I always think about that, okay, how many loans do I need to get out of this in order to pay for this? And it's always probably, I would say almost every single thing that I've invested in, within a month, I've probably done, directly tied to that event or investment, done what I need to do to have paid for it.
Hey, and it's a tax write-off, too. If you're in a 28% marginal tax bracket, it drives down the cost even more.
Yeah. But it's just that step that I think, a lot of people are unwilling to, want to take. But we have to look at our, as what we do. This isn't a job. This isn't a job where we, come in and hope something happens during the day and then we go home. I mean, this is our business. This is our own personal business, and we have to treat it like that. And if you're a business owner, you're going to make an investment in your business because that's how it works, and that's what Visa's for.
Yeah,
so.
Your reward is your paycheck, but the satisfaction comes in creating a high customer service level, so that you not only have your reward,
right,
but you also have a happy customer too. I mean, kind of the best of both worlds.
Right. Well, and I do think, as we talked about earlier, the market is going to turn. And if we don't have strong relationships in place with our business partners and with our clients, we may not make it. Those are the things that, regardless of what's happening on, with online lenders and, some of the different concerns people have about, hey, we may never have another refinance boom again. If they start really getting good at note modification and,
if anybody doesn't think that's coming, they're smoking dope.
Yeah, it's
because eventually, and it's coming very quickly too. There is going to be note modification, and the days of the refi, the way we're seeing it now, they will be a thing of the past, I think, within 4 or 5 years, easily.
Well, and I agree. And actually, when we're sitting at rates like we have been at, really since, 97, 98, last year, this year, there's not a lot more people out there, realistically, that should need to refinance. So I think even if we do run into a good rate market, what would have been out there for us, is going to get snapped up with the streamlines, with the note modification. And I guess, the point is we can't get all fat and sassy in markets like this. It's good to make money, like we said, make hay while the sun shines. But if we're not taking the right steps right now to make sure that we've got really good relationships with those business partners, that we're doing the right thing with our clients, we're not going to survive. I mean, there's people, I personally know right now who are doing 3 or 4 refinances a month, and that's it. And they're not doing anything to even stay in touch with those people. And I just think, gosh, it's been great to have you in the business, but, in 6 months, you're not going to be here.
Listen, I've been around a little bit longer than you, and I can absolutely assure you that when the worm turns, and it will, when the worm turns, there's going to be a certain number of a percentage of loan officers out there, 10, 15, 25%, I don't know what it's going to be, but they are going to get caught so flat-footed when the phone stops ringing and they have no databases. Things like the Turning Point went just kind of, well, I don't know. I'll look into that someday, and that's when when they're going to be in the car business.
Well, and I think the most important thing that we're trying to do right now is that we are working so hard to make sure that we are keeping all of our business partners happy, because they know that we're out there doing all these refinances. And, and we've, like I said, personally made a commitment that we're not doing refinances for just anybody. We're only doing them for referrals and past past clients. We're not taking any of the cold calls. And we've let our business partners know that, just to say, hey, you know what? Yes, we are working hard. Yes, it's taking us a little bit longer to return phone calls, but we want you to know that the commitment that we've made is that we're only working with your past clients. We're not, just out there trying to, grab every deal under the sun. And it is a little bit hard right now because they are, I think all of those, again, the realtors, financial planners, builders, they know, what we're doing. They know that we're busy, and they know we're making a lot of money, and it's a tougher market for them out there right now. And we are working really hard to take those extra steps to make sure that they know that, we're here, we're responding to those quicker than anything, the calls from our realtors. Just again, if you don't have those good relationships, and if you're not staying in contact and working those relationships, which is again another thing that we do with our database, I wouldn't expect those people to be around.
Yeah.
And the thing to remember, too, is that there are loan officers out there who are not super busy right now, which is scary. But those are the loan officers that have lots of time on their hands right now to be hitting on my business partners.
Listen, anybody that's not out there calling on realtors now, I mean, I know
it.
You need to time block. I know
Absolutely.
Jim McMahon is a real big proponent of time blocking, and you got to time block out there and get out there and see those realtors, even when you don't want to because you're so busy. Because it's it's out of sight, out of mind in that business.
Well, and a perfect thing to be doing right now, too, that we've been doing is, because we are actually knowing that the inevitable turn is coming, is we've done a lot of work in kind of broadening the base of the kinds of people or the types of people that we're working with. Like I said, the financial planners has been a big addition. But we're also asking the realtors that we do work with and the financial planners that we do work with who else they know. Do you have another agent in your office that's having a tough time, with their loan officer? Is there, someone you'd like to perhaps introduce me to that we might be a good fit for? Because, like I said, there's a lot of people that are open game right now.
Yeah, right.
So we're getting them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But,
well, look, I think I'd like to kind of wrap up on that high note. It's been wonderful talking. We've talked about 5 or 6 separate things that people can do, and not every interview is like that. Sometimes we'll always pick up 1 or 2, but I think we've picked up a lot of different things, from the Turning Point to Arched and Barry and some others that are real concrete ideas that loan officers can use. Even, you didn't mention it, but I will, and that's the fact that these are things that loan officers who are doing pretty well ought to be doing.
Huge. Absolutely.
Right. Just because you're doing a lot of volume right now doesn't mean you really have your act together.
Absolutely right.
So,
in most cases, this is when you're least likely to have your act together.
Right, exactly.
So.
Well, look, I want to thank you so much, Sue. It's a wonderful talking to you, and best to you, Susan.
All right.
Thanks so much. I'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye now.